long before the first revelation came down, before the message of Islam illuminated Arabia, there was a man who looked at his world and simply refused to accept it. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into the incredibly cinematic and inspiring story of a lone seeker of truth in the ancient Arabian desert. We're talking about a man who stood entirely alone against the immense pressure of his society. His name was Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl, and his life, well, it reads like a dramatic epic of rebellion, relentless searching, and just unyielding faith.
Picture this. You're standing in the ancient city of Makkah in the late 6th century. You're completely surrounded by hundreds of stone and wooden idols placed all inside and around the sacred Kaaba. Pilgrims are everywhere, right? They're offering sacrifices to these inanimate objects. Now imagine being the only person with the clarity to look at these idols and ask a really profound question. Can these stones hear? Can they help? Can they harm? Zayd was a man whose heart completely rejected what his eyes saw.
To really get why Zayd's courage is so mind-blowing, we have to look at the world he was born into. It was an era often referred to as Jahiliyyah, which translates to the age of ignorance. The Quraysh tribe, and Zayd was a part of this through the noble Banu Adi clan, they completely dominated this society. It was a culture deeply entrenched in polytheism, where these really harsh ancestral traditions were passed down and honestly just followed blindly. Disagreeing with the tribe wasn't just frowned upon, it meant risking your livelihood, your social standing, and literally your life. But you know what? Zayd completely refused to conform. He would literally stand with his back against the Kaaba and boldly call out his own people. He proclaimed that they had corrupted the original, pure faith of their ancestor, the Prophet Ibrahim or Abraham. Imagine the tension in the air. He wasn't just quietly disagreeing in the corner, he was publicly challenging the religious and economic foundation of the entire Quraysh establishment.
The rebellion, standing alone against the stones.
So Zayd launched a one-man rebellion against what he saw as the spiritual and moral decay of his people, and his actions were drastically different from the norm. While his tribesmen sacrificed animals to deities like Al-Uzza and Tubal, Zayd point-blank refused to eat their meat. He insisted on consuming only what was slaughtered by invoking the name of the one creator. He'd openly tell the Quraysh, "Look, God created the sheep and sent down the rain to feed it, yet you're slaughtering it in the name of a stone?" It just made no sense to him. But his rebellion wasn't just about theology. It was deeply moral. Pre-Islamic Arabia suffered from this horrific practice where fathers would sometimes bury their infant daughters alive out of shame or extreme poverty. Zayd couldn't stand for it. He actively intervened. Early sources tell us he would go straight to these fathers and say, "Do not kill her, for I will feed her on your behalf." He took these infant girls, raised them in his own home, protected them, and when they were grown, offered to return them safely to their families. Just incredible compassion. Naturally, going against the grain like this came with a massive price tag. Early Islamic historians like Al-Tabari meticulously preserved the details of Zayd's isolation. His own family turned against him. His half-brother, a guy named Al-Khattab, launched a severe campaign of persecution against him. He'd actually gather the youth of the tribe to harass Zayd and eventually forced him into exile, making him live out in the caves of Mount Hira, violently preventing him from even setting foot in Makkah.
The quest, a journey beyond Arabia.
Driven out of his home and absolutely refusing to conform to the idolatry of the Hijaz region, Zayd hit the road. He embarked on this grueling geographical and spiritual quest. Historical sources trace his path far beyond Arabia. He ventured up north into Mosul in Iraq, and then traveled all throughout the lands of Sham, Greater Syria. And he wasn't just aimlessly wandering around, he was investigating. He actively sought out the most learned Jewish and Christian scholars of his time, tirelessly searching these different communities for what he believed was the true uncorrupted religion of Ibrahim. The trials of truth, debating the scholars. During his journey across the Near East, Zayd critically engaged with these leading religious figures, really holding their doctrines up to his own strict criteria. The historical records narrate this fascinating encounter with a Jewish rabbi. When Zayd asked about their faith, the rabbi basically told him that to join them, he'd have to take on a share of God's anger. Zayd's response? It was profound. He said, "I only seek to escape from the anger of God. How could I carry any of it?" He politely but very firmly declined any doctrine that didn't feel completely aligned with his understanding of a pure, merciful creator. He kept searching and ended up having a really similar encounter with a Christian monk. The monk told him that to enter their religion, he would have to take a share of God's curse. And again, Zayd gave a hard pass. He said, "I only flee from the curse of God. I cannot accept it." You see, he found that both communities had elements he just couldn't reconcile with the original worship of Abraham. He was looking for a direct connection to God, totally without intermediaries.
The faith of Abraham, the path of the Hanif.
So, completely unsatisfied by the major religions of the Near East, Zayd realized that the primordial truth he was looking for was actually a path that existed way before the divisions of his time. It was the path of the Hanif. Now, what's a Hanif? A Hanif was a seeker of truth who completely turned their back on polytheism and idolatry, dedicating themselves strictly to original monotheism. The Hunafa were incredibly rare in pre-Islamic Arabia. While a few of his peers did eventually convert to Christianity, Zayd stood completely alone in maintaining this independent, pure Abrahamic monotheism. Because he couldn't find an existing community that matched his beliefs, Zayd established his own strict personal code based purely on his convictions. And his practices were incredibly distinct for his time. He worshipped the one creator of the heavens and the earth, period. He vehemently refused carrion and any meat sacrificed to idols, totally shunning the traditions of his ancestors. And beautifully enough, he would face the Kaaba in Makkah to pray, recognizing it as the original sanctuary built by Abraham.
But here's the thing. Despite his fierce convictions, Zayd experienced this deep, deep spiritual agony. He knew exactly who to worship, but he didn't have a scripture or a prophet to tell him exactly how. Sources tell us he would ride out into the desert, bow down right there on his riding animal, and cry out to the heavens, "O Allah, if I knew the most beloved way to you, I would worship you through it, but I do not know it." It's just such a heartbreaking image, isn't it? A man so desperate for divine guidance.
A nation unto himself, the tragic return and legacy. Then, finally, a breakthrough. While in Syria, a scholar gave Zayd the news he had waited a literal lifetime to hear. A new prophet was due to emerge, and he was coming from Zayd's very own homeland in Makkah. Filled with absolute hope, Zayd immediately turned back, racing toward Makkah to meet him. But, tragically, he never made it. While passing through the southern borders of Syria around the year 605 CE, Zayd was ambushed and killed by a group of bandits. He died just 5 years before the dawn of Islam. He was so close. Zayd never lived to hear a single verse of the Quran, and he never got to stand proudly alongside the companions of the Prophet. Yet, his legacy was cemented forever. Years later, when asked about Zayd's fate, Prophet Muhammad made a breathtaking declaration. He stated that on the Day of Judgment, Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufail would be resurrected entirely as a nation unto himself. Because he had the courage to stand alone in life, he is granted the immense honor of a whole nation in the afterlife. Zayd's extraordinary life leaves us with a pretty heavy question to ponder today. If a single man could find the absolute courage to seek the ultimate truth, standing entirely alone against his entire world, what is stopping us from seeking truth in ours? Zayd's story is the ultimate reminder of the incredible bravery it takes to walk a righteous path, even if for a time you have to walk it completely alone. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. Keep seeking the truth, and I'll catch you in the next one.